Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Lisa Carrillo. Lisa Carrillo is the author of An Unprincipled Life, Living Life from the Unknown. And you can find out more about Lisa Carrillo and her wonderful work at her website, experiencingthetrueself.com. Welcome, Lisa Carrillo.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I really enjoy the opportunity to be with you.
So, Lisa Carrillo, your website is called Experiencing the True Self. In your opinion, what is the true self?
Well, I don't really conceptualize about that. It's more an experience. And so from my experience, it's the innermost essence. It's not our body. It's not our thoughts. It's not our emotions. It's easier to say what it's not, but it's the part that is always there and that is noticing everything else, feeling everything else, but not actually ever being harmed. It's very spacious. It's more being than anything else.
Okay. Now, what is, in your opinion, infinite being?
So infinite being is this essence. And as we tune into it, we recognize that it's actually not local. It's the same awareness in everyone. And so it's infinite being expanding through all that exists.
So in your opinion, our true self and infinite being are one and the same. Did I get that right?
Right. Yes. Yes. The true self is where we tap into it, and infinite being, once we tap into it, is its expansiveness into everything.
So you, in your book, An Unprincipled Life, Living Life from the Unknown, you talk about different ways for us to experience or tap into our infinite being. How do we go about accessing our infinite being?
Well, first, I'm sure, Catherine, you've already had many experiences yourself, and I'm sure the listeners have too. And you may catch them or not catch them when they happen. But perhaps you see a gorgeous sunset or sunrise, and something in you just goes, and that gasp of wonder just kind of takes you out of any concepts of being anything. You're just lost in this expansive awe. Or you hold a brand new baby and somehow there's no past, there's no future, you're just in this moment, or moments of flow. There's so many times that we're actually in that. And one of the main ways that you can feel it is actually just stilling ourselves and feeling the aliveness in our body. You can say, where's my right elbow? And you can know where it is without looking or touching it. There's like this inner aliveness, and that's kind of the doorway into feeling it.
So from what I'm hearing, Lisa Carrillo, and I'm going to use my words, you're talking about feeling the energy that we are. Is that correct?
Yes, I love that way of putting it.
Yeah, so feeling the energy that we are. And one of the things that we know here at the Natural Healing Show, I always say you're already a VIP. So what do I mean by that? Like Lisa Carrillo and I are both nice people. However, our energy is different. So each human has a unique vibrational you're a unique vibrational interference pattern. That's why I said you're already a VIP. So your energy and your frequency is unique to you. And so it's my experience when we tune into, we feel, we pay attention, we notice the energy that we are, then you can tune into what Lisa Carrillo is talking about, our true self, our infinite being.
I like that. It's so true. It the infinite projects in a unique expression through each of us. And as we tap into that unique expression, we can feel underneath it even to the source that's universal.
All right. Now, you talk about suffering. And one of my 10 books is called The Difference Between Pain and Suffering. And it's about how to get out of pain naturally without drugs. And pain is a physical experience. Suffering is the emotional experience. In your opinion, Lisa Carrillo, why does life seem to include suffering?
You know, when we're suffering, we are actually noticing, or we're being invited to notice what we're not. And then from that, to know what we are. The part of us that suffers is the idea we have about ourselves. We want to look good. We want to be understood. We want to be appreciated, all these things. But all those thoughts that we have about ourselves or that other people have about us are not what we are. And when we're invested in those thoughts, we will end up suffering because those thoughts will go up and down. But once we suffer, we can say, oh my gosh, what is the thought that I'm having challenged right now? Like, I should be a good person and I should take care of myself. And one of those thoughts feels like it's being challenged and I'm suffering. But when we let go of the thoughts, we can feel the inner aliveness that's just calling us forth into each next moment. And then we realize that we're sufficient. So the suffering is this wonderful opportunity to step out of the thought self and into the true self.
Okay. Now, Lisa Carrillo, as we've all experienced, again, as they say, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. But at the same time, we do, for a fact, as part of our human experience pain and experience suffering. So if someone was truly suffering right now and they're listening to this broadcast and they're in physical pain or emotional suffering, what would you recommend for them to have a different experience?
Well, those feel like two different questions to me: physical pain versus emotional suffering. So if you don't mind, I'll answer them separately.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So physical pain, assuming you've already done everything you know to do to not have it, right? Then I have been in a moment of totally excruciating pain. And it lasted a couple of days because things that were going on with my body. There was nothing that could be done. I was in the hospital and they were doing what they could do. There was nothing that could be done. And I sat there and something in me survived that second. And then the pain was just kind of taking up all my awareness at that point. And then I couldn't really think about past or future. It was just, okay, now there's the next moment. And I survived that moment. And what I noticed was somehow the strength to survive each next moment kept showing up. And so the physical pain ended up just tapping me into this amazing well of strength I didn't know I had. I mean, it felt like I couldn't bear it, but somehow there was the strength to bear it. Then when it comes to emotional pain, there's a lot of options for that. But here's one really simple one that I found is very helpful. I call it the 3 wells. So first, I deeply sense into what is hurting and have compassion for that aspect of myself. What do I feel? What am I feeling? Demeaned? Am I feeling rejected? Am I feeling afraid? What is it? And just bathe myself in compassion. And then after that, and I give it plenty of time to marinate. Then I sit in attention, wise attention, and I just look. Have I made any assumptions about what I need from some particular person? Maybe I need it from someone else or from myself. Have I made any assumptions about what somebody else meant towards me? Maybe they were just in a bunch of pain themselves and really it had nothing to do with me. Or maybe there's options I haven't considered. So the wise attention is sort of this open meditative inquiry where I just feel deeply and look. Just being open that I may have missed something. And then after that, what arises is, what's my next step? And whatever arises is my next step, whether it's another form of self-care or an apology or taking an action that I was afraid to take, I take that action without attachment. So unattached action, just going forward and into the mystery. I do my next step and see what the universe provides.
Okay, great suggestions. Now, the subtitle of your book, An In Principle Life, is called Living Life from the Unknown. And years ago, I read a book from the Middle Ages called The Cloud of Unknowing. And its author is unknown, but it's about the mystery and the unknown of life and how to endure the unknown. What is your insight about how can we endure the unknown? So many of us, even people come to me because they want clarity. They want understanding of what's going on in their body or what is their path. How can we endure the unknown?
Yes. So what I've discovered is that actually the unknown is the place where life is juiciest. The unknown is where we're tapping into the immense mystery that we are. We can be in the known and be happy getting what we want, but then it doesn't stay. What we know never lasts because life is very dynamic. If I had lived out the plans I had when I was 20, it would be such a smaller life than what actually happened. So the unknown is actually the realm of possibility. It's the realm of intuition. And so anytime that we're being disappointed, it's kind of a gentle reminder, hey, there's something better than what you thought. So I find that I want to live in the unknown because I prefer not to be in this comfortable, I have it figured out, because then I'm going to go into my head. And if I'm in this mystery, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Then I'm going to be attuned to that moment by moment alive potential. And that's where infinite being is most palpable.
Okay, now there is no doubt that life can be extremely challenging, whether we have health challenges or financial challenges or relation challenges, or we're just looking at what's going on in the world at large. How can we build resilience to whatever happens?
Yes. There's so many ups and downs, right? And so my experience, and I'm sure you relate to this, Catherine, once you feel that deep essence of what you are, there's a certain unharmability to that essence. All the hurts are experiences going through the surface, but that deep essence actually is not harmed. So spending time in that every day is really vital. And then the second thing is noticing that the mystery is good. So you can notice the mystery is good by looking at things that you thought were disappointments and noticing, oh my gosh, actually good came out of it. I wouldn't trade that experience after all. Or doing your gratitude list, or being kind to somebody without them noticing what you're doing. All these things keep us tapped into the fact that life is naturally benevolent. And that sort of relaxes our stress responses and reminds us that we're safe.
Okay. And, you bring up several points because you said we are safe. However, many of us have experienced trauma, PTSD, war, all kinds, manner of abuse. And in those instances, on many levels, we actually were not safe, right?
Yes. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
And
So we can't say there's no pain. We can't say there's no suffering. And we can't say that we're always safe, because that's actually not a truth on many levels, right?
on many levels, we are not safe. Our body is not safe. Our emotions are not safe. Our ideas of ourselves are not safe. But there is this infinite part of ourselves. That's the part that's safe. And that's the part that will outlast all the other parts. So once the other parts start to feel more like the close, and the infinite part feels like what we are, only from that place can it feel like we're safe. Life is not safe as an experience.
Right.
Life is all up and down.
So you yourself have had experiences. What led you in your own life to develop this philosophy of life?
So, like I said, I don't have it as a theory or a philosophy because it's actually outrageous. I mean, what somebody one time said, eventually forgiveness is unnecessary. And when I heard that, I thought, that is so ludicrous. No human could have come up with that idea. But I kept hearing things like enlightenment is actually real. And I knew when somebody said that, I didn't know what enlightenment was, but I knew it was this intimate living experience with the infinite. And that was all that ever mattered to me. I can feel that I'm going to live beyond death, that death is just going to happen to my body. So ever since I was a little girl, when I looked in the mirror, I'm always surprised that that's what I look like, because I just don't identify with this body. So that inner knowing has had me constantly listening for how can I experience this fullness that I intuit I am while I'm having the limitations of being human.
Okay, and with that, let's take a break and listen to one of our commercial sponsors here at UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. And we're interviewing Lisa Carrillo about her book, An Unprincipled Life. Lisa Carrillo, what difficulties have you overcome in your personal life and how?
So one good example is a particular sort of panic response I developed as a very young child. And there's certain situations that would make my whole being sort of constrict up, and I'd want to disappear, feeling like I don't belong, I'm unworthy, I might die, just that panic response. And, I was taught that you should engage with people. People are going to like you if you're responding to them. So I managed to find a way to keep the superficial stuff going while this freezing happened inside. And it, you know, it became just this thing. I didn't know when it would happen, but I could go into a hospital room, at work, and I'm going to do an ultrasound on a patient, and something about the hospital room or what the patient says or something, and there it is, it's happening.
So what I'm hearing is you used to have anxiety and panic attacks.
I guess it could be like that. It could be. Yeah, I actually never put a name on it. Yes. And so it came as three different things that helped. One was actually looking at all the things that I knew could trigger them, to the point that I could tell myself, all this experience is a physical experience. All this emotional interpretation is actually no longer true. And so it became that. It became a physical experience rather than emotional experience. And, there's a lot of therapy and holding myself and spending a lot of time in compassion and understanding and journaling, etc. But, to get it to a physical experience. And then the other thing is tapping into infinite being. And at the level of infinite being, that experience is actually interesting, which seems outrageous, right? I could not tell anybody to do that. I can only say that's what happened for me. That once I am experiencing myself as infinite being, suddenly it's like, wow, I'm this gigantic, alive immensity. And yet somehow I've created a situation where I get to experience becoming this tiny ball of panic. And I was actually fascinated. It was like, tell me more. Let me understand that. Let me tease out what exactly is the body doing. And then finally, there became this understanding that I am the universe having fun, that any experience is like the universe throwing itself a party. And as I'm feeling that, it's like, oh, of course, I like to go on roller coasters. I like to watch movies that have, exciting moments and then a nice completion. This is my life, getting to do the exact same thing. I get to feel what it's like to be strong in a moment of fear. I mean, there's no way infinite being could feel strength in a moment of fear unless there was a limitation. And so it's getting to be this human limitation where I get to experience that. So I just pull it close, hold it with compassion, and then let the fullness of the moment show itself.
Okay, interesting explanation about how to overcome anxiety and panic attacks. And, one way I would explain it to my clients is when you live through anxiety or a panic attack, part of what you do is you expand your ability to handle life, right? And when you go through a challenging time, whether it's a panic attack or any other challenging time, and like you said, you tap into the infinite being, the part of you beyond all space and time, then you realize you've expanded your self-definition. Now, Lisa Carrillo, here we are at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. So it's not philosophy, it's actually understanding about how we can heal ourselves naturally. So how can experiencing our infinite being help us to be healthier and happier?
The biggest benefit that I've experienced is to no longer have any regrets. Any past that I regret, whether I regret that something happened to me or I regret that I did something or didn't do something, leaves this stress being held in my body. And it creates a little bit of a caution going forward into the future because I don't want that to happen again. So the stress and the caution are this constant weight that is a big detriment to my health. But once I've gone through and looked, literally made a list of every single regret, like I said, whether it happened to me or something I did or didn't do, and really just sat with them meditatively to see, was there any good that came out of that? And finally, with no regrets, I feel so much more open to life, so much more capable that whatever comes is going to end up working out. And that stress just ends up sinking away out of my body.
So, Lisa Carrillo, what does it actually look like to connect to our infinite being? Is that spending a time in meditation every day? How would you recommend that people do it?
That feeling the aliveness inside of us, that's for me the most natural way. I can just sit and marinate in this aliveness that I don't have to make happen. It's there already when I look for it. But there's other ways, you can sit and just look at something beautiful and be the attention absorbed in something beautiful. Or it doesn't even have to be something beautiful. If you're absorbed in curiosity, you can take a marble and look at the marble and just let yourself become the pure curiosity. And I'll start noticing all the little details, and then I'm going to do it for half an hour, 20 minutes, and I seem to run out of details. So I sink even deeper and find more new details. And suddenly this sensing curiosity becomes all that I am. And that experience is also a really great way of just opening out of that, image person into this more expanded, already there awareness.
So why do you think that so many of us have a limited understanding of who we are?
Why? Well, it's when we get born, we automatically are in this totally different thing, and to try to manage all these sensations coming at us, we come up with these systems. We might decide, I'm going to be the funny person, or I'm going to be the intelligent person, or I'm going to be the loving person, or I'm the person who needs some extra attention here. Whatever that is that we come up with as a strategy, that helps us kind of get through, but it also puts us in a box. So there you go. We end up putting ourselves in a box as a strategy.
Okay, so in your terminology, would this be our ego persona that limits us?
Exactly.
So Lisa Carrillo, again, the subtitle of your book is Living Life from the Unknown. What does it actually mean to live life from the unknown?
I think everybody's done it at various moments. There's this sort of exhilaration when you don't quite know what's going to happen, but yet something inside you knows it's good. Maybe you're starting a brand new job and you aren't anxious about it. Some people are anxious, but some people are excited about it, right? Or you're going to a party where there's a bunch of people that you like, or you're about to go on a trip with one of your favorite people. You don't really know how the trip is going to go, but there's this sense of adventure. And really, every moment is like that. We really don't know. We don't know what's next. When we get into the narrowed attention and we're just kind of saying, oh yeah, this is going to be that way and this is going to be that way, we're not so much in the unknown, and we end up sort of sinking into that limited way of being. Not that that's ever wrong, but the potential is to feel the possibility and live in that curiosity and discovery.
Great explanation. I would also add to that is really honoring the fact that as human beings, we need both certainty. Like I know that when I get up, I'm going to put my feet on the ground and the ground will be there to support me. And we also need uncertainty. If we didn't need uncertainty, people would never travel or go to different restaurants, right? If everything's the same all the time, then that limits our experience of life. So really honoring that we need both certainty and uncertainty. So again, you're in your terminology, absolutes. Don't people need absolutes, like being a good parent, having plenty of money, etc.?
Right. Boy, I have thought that there were at least some absolutes, that I should always be kind. I mean, isn't that true? But if I have the belief that I should always be kind, I am creating stress for myself, because there will be moments when my idea of kind is not what I'm going to end up doing. There's this one situation where a friend, not a really close friend, but a friend needed to go somewhere 2 hours away. And I had done some other things to help her, but I really did not want to drive her 2 hours. And I decided to trust that life arising in me was wise. So I told her I wasn't available to drive her. And later I found out that her son, whom she had been alienated from, really wanted to drive her.
Oh,
So not being kind turned out to be the right thing. So when we're willing to just follow that inner intuition and not obey any rule, then we can see that life may have something better than we imagined.
I love that. And I love the phrase you just used, which is to trust that a life arising in me is wise. So how can, and so many people come to me, I am a medical intuitive healer, for intuitive guidance and also to trust their own intuition. How can we learn to trust the life in us, arising in us, and trust the wisdom of what we are experiencing?
Oh, Catherine, I love that question because I puzzled over that for so long. It was like I could tell sometimes I was being guided and sometimes I felt so confused and I didn't know where in the world to find it again. And so what became my practice was in all the little things. So when I was going to decide what's my next activity for the day, I'd actually stop and just feel, what am I drawn to right now? When I'm deciding how much time to spend with a friend or not spend with a friend, I'd feel in and go with that. So very little things. How much water am I going to drink? Just take it little by little by little. And it's when I got much better at noticing the little things that the big things just became so much more obvious.
I love that explanation. And I agree that, we can start with the little things, right? Like I turn on my intuition every day by asking, what color do I wear? It's like, something small. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I like all different colors. So when you get good at trusting for the little things, then you get better at trusting the larger things. I also like that you talked about really paying attention to the energy, right? Because sometimes life is really coming at us fast and furious. Sometimes it feels like it's moving away from us. But when we really pay attention to the energy, then we can be guided and we're not, we already know that things are harder for us if we try to paddle upstream, for example, right?
Yes.
We pay attention to the energy and read the energy of any situation, then it's easier to just go with the flow.
Right. Oh, that's so true. Because as energy is not static. We tend to have ideas And we tend to think that we want to feel this constant state, but that is not a biological entity. That is not a spiritual entity. We are seasonal. We can look at nature. We can see that everything undulates. So that things go small and get big, that things go quiet and then go loud, things go still and then go active. So we can just start to notice our whole lives are going to go in this flow. And we can just say, oh, right, this is one of those still moments, or, oh, right, this is one of those active moments. And none of them are wrong. We're never wrong. We can't ever be wrong.
I really like the phrase, trust the vibes, energy doesn't lie. And yet so many of us, we have ideas, or I'm on a schedule, or like, this is what's supposed to happen in my life at this time, right? So we have a picture in our head, and I find so much conflict happens when people have an inner picture of how they think they want their life to be, but when they feel into that picture, it just feels totally wrong. And
Yes.
right.
Yes, like it could be that a friendship is actually going through a more distant phase, and we will struggle against it, we'll blame the other person or whatever it is. But if we just accept, no, everything cycles, then it's okay. I mean, the energy is not wrong. It's our ideas about it that are getting frustrated.
And with that, let's take a break and listen to a message from one of our commercial sponsors. My name is Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, and I'm interviewing Lisa Carrillo, author of An Unprincipled Life. So Lisa Carrillo, earlier in this interview, you talked about yourself, and by staying in regular contact with your own infinite being, that you've learned to let go of regrets. How can the rest of us lose our regrets and learn to live a life a little bit more fearlessly without being afraid of making mistakes or other people making mistakes?
Yes. So when we start looking at regrets, they're all about us not achieving our ideal and what our idea is. And it takes some humility to be able to say, well, maybe I didn't know best. And to cultivate that humility, we can actually notice all the good things in our life that we didn't make happen. And when we start to notice, wow, there's another force out here that is making good things happen, then it can sort of relax us out of our sense that we have to control everything. And once we're not stuck in our need to control, we can actually look with curiosity and humility and see, oh, so maybe I never was supposed to be married more than 11 years. That was my first marriage. And I thought it was for life. And now, watching how he and I have gone in different paths after the divorce, there's no need to have any reason for that divorce. In the moment, I was trying to make reasons and give blame and blah, blah, blah. No, clearly, we were on different paths. The universe was pulling us apart. There was no need to make any blame. Any time that something looks like a regret, if we look later, we can see goodness actually happened. And my values have changed because of that. So I'll give a quick example here. So many times it looks like Now this has to be bad, right? My car is broken. Now I've got to pay the bills and I've got to take it to these various people, or this big flood happened in my home. I've got to spend them. How can that be good? That's just a hassle, right? That is a hassle. But when I noticed, but now I've met 5 people I would never have met. It's made me humble to think the universe thought that me meeting those people and giving them money was more important than my idea of an efficient, smooth life. And as that has happened over and over and over, I really sense the universe's values are all about putting me in path with people, having money exchanges with people. The universe loves all of that. So I might as well love it too. Otherwise, I'm going to be arguing with the universe all the time. So it's really changed how I look at everyday experiences.
I love that explanation. I would also add that as a medical intuitive healer, when I look at things on one level, if you look at things maybe on the ego level, there's a lot of tragedy. But when you look at things on the soul level, a lot of times there are soul agreements that we have. An example that I can give is one time years ago, I was at a convention and I was sitting next to this lady, and she turned to me and she said, I have no idea who you are or what you do, but I know you're supposed to help me. Well, anyway, it turns out she was a psychotherapist and she had been adopted. So needless to say, being a psychotherapist, she'd done a lot of therapy around the issue of being adopted. And when I did a medical intuitive reading for her, one of the things that I helped her to see was that on a soul level, on an ego level, her mother was what many people in society call a loser. She was a drug addict, an alcoholic, an unwed mother, and she gave away her baby. Lots of tragedy in that description. On a soul level, my client had been trying over and over again to be born. She wanted to be alive, to get a body, and her birth mother had agreed on a soul level to make that happen for her. So my point is, sometimes on a soul level, what's really happening is a 180-degree difference than what we think is actually happening on the ego level.
Yes, I have 2 examples for that. One is when I went in to get an IUD placed, I'd never been in this medical office or seen this doctor before. I saw him and I froze. There was some very powerful energy between the 2 of us. But then I just continued on as normal. He placed the IUD. It was so painful. I could not walk for over an hour. I ended up having cramps for 6 months. Then, several years later, it's time to get it out. It wasn't him who took it out, but again, the string was up there. They had to do this whole procedure to get it out, and it was quite the ordeal. And what I feel is that there was something between him and I, and that was the perfect way to resolve it. He got to do something in which I experienced a lot of pain, but it was under the technical thing of a medical procedure. So I didn't have any anger towards him. He didn't have any intention towards me. We just exchanged energy and it was over. And I feel like I completed something with him. And then another thing, I kept having this fear that I was going to cause somebody else to die. It was this constant obsession. And finally, I remembered a past life when I was a man in some kind of depression period. And I had 4 kids and we lived sort of like in tenements, and I didn't succeed in keeping them alive. They all ended up dying. And once I had that memory, I paused and I went and asked all 4 children, I'm sorry that I didn't give you a long life. Are you okay? And all 4 of them said, oh, yeah, we didn't want to be there for very long. They were very happy that I hadn't kept them alive.
Interesting story. So Lisa Carrillo, author of An Unprincipled Life, Living Life from the Unknown. Any final thoughts for our audience?
You know, we cannot mess up. Infinite being is interested in every experience we have. And in fact, I have this vision that the infinite being is sort of taking this little recipe of particular characteristics that it has, and then shooting it off into a soul to have many lives. And it says, I wonder what this one will do. And all we are is to demonstrate what that kind of recipe turns out to do. We cannot fail.
So interesting message. This is Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Our guest today has been Lisa Carrillo, and we've been talking about her book, An Unprincipled Life, Living Life from the Unknown. You can find out more about Lisa Carrillo and her wonderful work at her website, experiencingthetrueself.com. And remember, when you let go of self-judgment and you pay attention to the energy that you are and the energy around you, energy doesn't lie, and you end up healing yourself naturally. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.